The galaxy had known peace for centuries, an era where power was divided among countless factions and species, each carving out their space in the universe. The planets of the Intergalactic Alliance thrived under the protection of shared technology and mutual cooperation. But all of that came to an abrupt halt when the alien coalition arrived, their ships like dark shadows, stretching across the stars as they tore through peaceful colonies and silenced those who dared resist their dominance. The first signs of their intentions had been subtle. At first, the slow spread of their influence into trade routes, then the subtle erasure of any signs of opposition, until the day came when their fleets descended on the last planet that refused to kneel. It was a small world compared to the galactic giants, but it was a symbol, a last hope for those who still believed the galaxy could stand on its own. For years, the planet had fought alone, its army small and under-equipped, outmatched by the alien forces who unleashed unrelenting assaults on every city, every stronghold, hoping to force the inhabitants into submission. But the people refused to give in even as their world was shattered. Piece by piece, their resolve never faltered. The resistance fighters clung to the belief that there had to be something more out there, something that could tip the balance back into their favor. It had been a whisper at first, a rumor carried by those few who had escaped the aliens' grasp. Some had spoken of a force unknown to the invaders. Humans, they called them humans, a name that had no meaning for most. But to those who had heard it, it was a symbol of something more, something that could be the salvation they so desperately craved. Every day as the aliens pressed their advantage, the whispers grew stronger. The rumors of the humans began to spread through the remnants of the resistance, a force that had never been seen by the invaders, something that was not afraid to fight back, something that could break the chains of oppression. The leaders of the planet's last defense held tight to that glimmer of hope. They had no concrete evidence that these humans existed, no ships, no armies, no proof save for the belief that they had to be out there somewhere. Time was running out. The last major human stronghold had fallen, and now it was only a matter of time before the aliens would lay siege to the capital. But as the last of the fighters gathered on the outskirts of the city, they received a transmission. It was not from their own people. It was from someone they did not recognize. The coordinates were scrambled, the voice was distorted, but the message was clear. "We are humanity. We have come to save you. Prepare yourselves." It was enough to send ripples of disbelief through the resistance and a rush of hope flooding their hearts. If the humans truly had arrived, then perhaps there was still a chance. After all, perhaps they were not alone in their struggle against the alien might. The moment the transmission ended, a heavy silence fell over the resistance fighters who had heard it. They exchanged glances, unsure if they could believe what they had just received. Had it been a trick, or was it truly a sign of salvation? A few days passed, and the tension in the air grew thick as the aliens continued their advance, their fleets in orbit, making their presence felt with every passing hour. On the ground, the human-made message had given the rebels new energy. The resistance had no choice but to cling to that faint hope, desperate for anything that could disrupt the invaders' campaign. But still their doubts lingered, and the arrival of reinforcements seemed more like a fantasy than reality. Then on the 5th day after the transmission, the sky above the capital began to darken, not from the usual clouds of war and smoke, but from something far stranger. A ripple ran through the atmosphere as the resistance fighters looked up, seeing something they could not quite comprehend at first. They thought it was a distortion in the air, but it soon became clear what they were seeing. It was a fleet, hundreds of ships emerging from a nearby nebula, their shapes unlike any they had ever seen before. The human fleet arrived in perfect synchronization, as if guided by an unseen hand. A sleek and strange design covered each ship, their surfaces shimmering with a soft, otherworldly glow. The ships moved with a fluid grace, defying the harsh reality of space travel as they sliced through the stars like blades through fabric. The resistance stared in awe as they slowly descended toward the planet's surface. The aliens' commanders on the orbital stations quickly noticed the approaching vessels, and their initial reaction was one of curiosity. They had never encountered anything like this. Before, their sensors couldn't get a proper lock on the strange ships. Their readings were erratic, as if the very fabric of space was bent around them. But the aliens were not ones to show fear, especially not against an unknown force. They assumed the ships were simply a fluke or perhaps some sort of distraction. That was until they heard the first shots. The human ships had launched their offensive without warning, their weapons firing at such velocity and precision that the alien defense systems were rendered useless in moments. One by one, the key communication relays were knocked out, the planetary shield generators were obliterated in a flash of bright energy, and the once indestructible alien fleet began to falter as their lines were ripped apart before they even had time to react. The humans were not merely attacking, they were dismantling the alien infrastructure with cold efficiency. The resistance fighters on the ground watched as the sky exploded with energy and light from the massive human ships above. Strikes were delivered with such ferocity and accuracy that entire enemy divisions were destroyed in seconds. It was a battle like nothing the resistance had ever seen before, and it sent a shockwave through the heart of the enemy forces. They had thought themselves invincible, but these humans, they were something different. The aliens had never been faced with this kind of raw precision and overwhelming power. As the human ships continued to lay waste to the invaders' forces, the resistance gathered in the streets, knowing they had just witnessed the beginning of something incredible. The arrival of humanity had shattered the alien confidence and planted a seed of hope that had long been lost to them. The humans had arrived, and with them came the promise of freedom. The enemy fleet, once a symbol of invincibility, was now a fractured mess of chaos and confusion. The human forces had arrived like a storm, ripping through their ranks with ruthless precision. The alien commanders on the ground scrambled to coordinate their scattered forces, but the humans were already a step ahead, cutting off communications and isolating key targets with expert efficiency. The invaders were on the back foot, struggling to respond to an enemy they couldn't predict or understand. On the surface, the resistance fighters who had once fought alone now found themselves alongside the humans, their morale soaring as they witnessed firsthand the power of their new allies. The humans, clad in formidable combat armor and wielding weapons that seemed to defy logic, tore through alien defenses with ease. Each strike was calculated, each movement deliberate. It wasn't just their technology that gave them an edge, it was their approach to warfare itself. The humans didn't fight like any enemy they had ever encountered before. They didn't rely on brute strength or overwhelming numbers. They relied on precision, adaptability, and the element of surprise. The enemy, once so confident in their dominance, was being dismantled piece by piece. The alien troops, trained for conventional warfare, were ill-prepared for the guerrilla tactics employed by the human forces. While their own forces fought with rigid formations and predictable strategies, the humans moved with fluidity and adaptability. They struck from unexpected angles, infiltrated enemy strongholds with surgical precision, and left behind only destruction and confusion. The battle on the ground was a blur of fire and smoke as the human forces advanced with unstoppable momentum. They had taken out key enemy outposts, neutralized heavy artillery, and freed entire sections of the city from alien control, all in a matter of hours. Their relentless assault left the invaders reeling, unable to regroup in time to mount any kind of effective defense. Every time they thought they had secured a position, the humans would appear from the shadows, decimating their forces and disappearing before they could retaliate. The human soldiers were not just skilled in combat, they were masters of psychological warfare. The aliens were not used to being hunted, to having their every move anticipated and countered. They were used to being the hunters, the ones in control. But now, they were the prey, caught in a trap they had no hope of escaping. The humans didn't just fight for survival. They fought with a purpose, a burning desire to win at any cost, and that made them a force unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. One by one, the alien commanders were forced to retreat, abandoning their positions and leaving behind their once mighty war machines. The humans didn't give them the chance to regroup. They pursued relentlessly, cutting down any who dared resist. The alien forces, now in disarray, began to realize the true depth of their mistake. They had underestimated the humans, thinking them to be nothing more than a fleeting threat. But now it was clear. Humanity was not to be trifled with. Back at the heart of the resistance, the leaders gathered to assess the situation. The city, once a symbol of despair, was now a symbol of hope. The tide had turned, and it was all thanks to the arrival of the humans. The battle was far from over, but the enemy was no longer the unstoppable juggernaut they had once been. Now, the humans had given the planet's people something they hadn't had in years: hope. The fight was no longer a matter of survival. It was a matter of victory. And victory was within reach. As the enemy's ranks crumbled, the resistance fighters began to recognize that this was no ordinary force. The humans fought with a precision that bordered on eerie, an almost preternatural ability to anticipate enemy movements and strike where it hurt the most. They had no fear, no hesitation, charging into the chaos of battle without a second thought. Every human soldier moved with a purpose, a single-minded focus on victory, and the alien forces were quickly beginning to see the consequences of underestimating them. The battle was no longer one of mere survival. It was a race, a hunt. The humans had taken control of key sectors of the city in record time, and they didn't stop there. Instead of securing their positions, they pushed forward relentlessly, using the environment to their advantage. They set traps for the enemy, turning the streets into a labyrinth of chaos and confusion. Every time the aliens thought they had found an opening, the humans would strike again from an unexpected angle, tearing apart their lines and leaving the invaders scrambling to regroup. Human technology, though advanced, wasn't what set them apart. It was their minds. They were constantly adapting to the battlefield, using their ingenuity to find solutions that would be impossible for the alien forces to predict. The humans' ability to improvise, to think on their feet, gave them an edge that the aliens could not replicate. While the alien forces relied on rigid tactics and overwhelming firepower, the humans relied on agility, surprise, and an uncanny knack for exploiting weaknesses. Even the alien war machines, the terrifying machines of destruction that had once seemed unstoppable, were no match for human ingenuity. The human soldiers disabled the alien tanks and artillery with precision strikes, targeting vulnerable spots with devastating effect. In some cases, they even turned the alien technology against them, hacking into their systems and using their own weapons to dismantle the forces they had once considered invincible. It wasn't just the technology, it was the way the humans used it. They didn't rely on brute force or sheer numbers. They outsmarted their enemies, taking advantage of every opportunity, every weakness, and exploiting them without mercy. The alien forces, despite their technological superiority, were forced to adapt quickly, but it wasn't enough. They had never encountered a force like this, a force that fought not just with weapons, but with mind and spirit. And it was this very spirit, this unyielding will to win, that made the humans so deadly. As the fighting raged on, the resistance fighters watched in awe as the humans turned the tide of the battle. Entire sectors of the city, once overrun by the enemy, were being retaken with breathtaking speed. The human forces moved in tight coordination, working seamlessly with the resistance fighters to clear out enemy positions. They were a well-oiled machine, each unit supporting the other, and the aliens were being overwhelmed by their efficiency. In one of the hardest-hit districts, a human squad leader, known only as Captain Rook, led his team through the decimated streets. His eyes were sharp, scanning every corner, every building, every shadow. His voice crackled through the comms, calm but firm. "Stay sharp. They'll try to counterattack. Be ready." It wasn't the first time Rook had led his men into the heart of enemy territory, but there was something different about this mission. The way the aliens had reacted to their arrival was unlike anything he'd seen before. The fear in their eyes, their hesitation, was palpable. Rook's squad moved swiftly, clearing building after building, their movements synchronized like a dance. They set explosives in enemy-controlled zones, taking out artillery and communication relays with surgical precision. They made sure no alien was left standing, but they didn't linger. The city was a maze, and there was no time to waste. Rook knew the aliens would adapt eventually. They had to strike fast before the invaders could regroup. As they reached the outskirts of the district, Rook stopped and surveyed the destruction behind them. The alien forces were in full retreat, but their warships in orbit were still trying to rally for a counterstrike. The humans had inflicted serious damage to their ground forces, but the fight was far from over. They needed more support, more firepower, and more determination to push the enemy back once and for all. He turned to his squad, his eyes burning with resolve. This isn't over. We take the capital, and we don't stop until every last one of them is gone. The resistance, emboldened by the human forces, roared in agreement. Together, they would finish what they had started. The humans had not only brought firepower to the fight, they had reignited the flame of hope in a planet on the brink of destruction. As the battle raged on across the city, the human forces began to uncover a terrifying secret hidden within the heart of the enemy's operations. The aliens, in their unrelenting quest for domination, had been conducting gruesome experiments on the planet's native species, using them as both biological weapons and expendable labor. Entire villages had been taken and transformed into factories, where the native creatures were forcibly altered, turned into living soldiers or subjugated workers, all in the name of advancing the enemy's war effort. The sight of these atrocities fueled the human soldiers' resolve. They were not just fighting to win. They were fighting to liberate those who had been oppressed for far too long. For the first time in months, the resistance fighters felt the spark of true hope burn bright within their hearts. This was no longer just about their own survival. This was about ending the suffering of the innocent, freeing their planet from the grip of these alien invaders, and ensuring that such horrors would never be allowed to happen again. Captain Rook and his squad led the charge, pushing deeper into enemy territory as they uncovered more of the alien forces' cruel operations. The native creatures, many of whom had been hiding in fear for years, now saw the humans not as distant saviors but as comrades, beacons of hope who had come to end their nightmare. In the ruins of an enemy research facility, the destruction of the enemy research facility had been a blow to the alien forces, but it was only a precursor to what was to come. As the human forces continued to push deeper into enemy-held territory, their efforts only grew bolder. The alien commanders, now fully aware of the threat humanity posed, scrambled to reorganize and mount a defense. But it was too late. The humans had already gained the upper hand, and their relentless advance showed no signs of slowing. The heart of the enemy's operations was still their command ship, a massive vessel orbiting high above the planet. This ship was the nerve center of the alien coalition, a hub where every decision, every command was issued. It was heavily shielded, bristling with weapons, and protected by a fleet of warships. To the alien forces, it was an invulnerable fortress. But to the humans, it was nothing more than a target. The strategy was simple, yet bold. Disable the command ship, cripple the alien leadership, and force the invaders to retreat. It was a mission fraught with danger, and failure meant the potential loss of everything they had fought for. But Captain Rook knew that this was the turning point. If they could bring down the command ship, they could deal a crushing blow to the invaders' will to fight. Rook stood in the operations room of one of the human vessels, watching as his officers coordinated the attack. "We hit them where it hurts," he said, his voice cold and confident. "We take out their communication relays, their fleet coordination centers, and their power grid. The moment we disable their shields, we go in for the kill." The plan was set into motion with surgical precision. The human fleet launched its assault on the alien command ship's defenses, using advanced stealth technology to get as close as possible before launching their opening salvo. The alien warships were slow to react, and by the time they did, it was already too late. The humans' fighters, small and agile, darted between enemy lines, dodging fire and picking off key targets with pinpoint accuracy. In a matter of moments, the alien defense fleet was in disarray, unable to respond to the humans' calculated strikes. Meanwhile, on the ground, the resistance forces launched their own diversionary attacks, drawing the attention of the remaining enemy troops and creating chaos in the streets. The human forces had become masters of deception, using feints, traps, and unpredictable maneuvers to ensure the alien forces were never able to fully regroup. Every move was calculated to keep the invaders off balance and prevent them from organizing any meaningful counteroffensive. With the alien fleet thrown into disarray, the human command ship made its move. It wasn't just a bombardment from a distance, it was a full-on assault. Human ships, once thought too small and vulnerable to face the might of the enemy fleet, now overwhelmed the alien forces with speed, precision, and unmatched firepower. The alien warships fell one by one, their shields failing under the relentless onslaught. The human ships seemed to anticipate every countermeasure, every defensive maneuver, moving with an uncanny synchronization that left the enemy stunned. And then, the critical moment arrived. A small team of elite human soldiers, equipped with cutting-edge technology, infiltrated the heart of the command ship. Their mission was clear: disable the alien command center, sever communications, and neutralize the leadership. The team, led by a hardened veteran named Sergeant Avery, infiltrated the command ship under the cover of a surprise assault, hacking into the alien systems with brutal efficiency. Their mission was a race against time, knowing that if they didn't succeed, the entire operation would fall apart. As they navigated the dark, twisting corridors of the alien ship, the tension was palpable. Every step was calculated, every corner checked for traps. But the team was unrelenting. They knew what was at stake. The moment they reached the command center, Sergeant Avery issued the order to initiate the final sequence, shut down the enemy's power, and cripple their communications. Within moments, the command ship went dark. The lights flickered and died, and the alien forces in orbit were thrown into disarray. The human fleet moved in for the kill, launching a final barrage of missiles and energy blasts. The alien leadership, isolated and unable to respond, was left defenseless. The command ship was torn apart in a spectacular explosion, sending shockwaves through the remaining alien forces. The loss of their central hub shattered their coordination, and the remaining ships began to retreat in a panic. The invaders, once so confident in their superiority, were now scrambling for survival. The battle was far from over, but the humans had achieved a decisive victory. The heart of the alien war machine had been destroyed, and the enemy forces, now leaderless and disorganized, were no longer a threat. The resistance, emboldened by the humans' victory, rallied behind them, preparing for the final push to reclaim their planet once and for all. As the alien stronghold crumbled under the weight of the human assault, the air seemed to pulse with the tension of what was to come. The enemy, though scattered and demoralized, still had pockets of resistance spread throughout the planet. They weren't going down without a fight. Even without their leadership and shattered communication networks, they still posed a formidable threat. The remaining invaders would do everything in their power to keep control of what little they had left. Captain Rook and his team moved swiftly through the debris of the stronghold, cutting down the last alien forces and preparing for the final stages of their mission. They had secured the central command center, but there was still work to be done. There were remnants of the alien army scattered throughout the mountainous regions, entrenched in the underground bunkers that they had been using to regroup. "We can't let them dig in any deeper," Rook muttered, his voice low and tense. "If they rebuild, we're back at square one. We push forward and finish this." Sergeant Avery, ever sharp, was quick to voice the next step. "We take the North Pass. It leads straight to their remaining strongholds. If we can cut them off from their supply routes, we can finish them for good. No more reinforcements." Rook nodded. "Get the resistance fighters ready. We make one last push. This ends today." The resistance fighters, who had fought tirelessly alongside the humans, were now more determined than ever. They had seen the invaders' cruelty firsthand, and their desire for revenge was palpable. Their unity with the human forces had given them strength, and now They were ready to finish the job. As they made their way toward the North Pass, the resistance fighters moved in tight formation, with human soldiers flanking their sides. They were no longer simply allied forces. They were one unit, bound by a common cause. They had learned from each other, adapted to each other's tactics, and now they were unstoppable. The terrain grew more rugged as they neared the mountain pass, the rocky cliffs towering overhead. The alien forces had fortified their positions here, using the natural landscape to their advantage. The remains of their war machines were scattered across the area, as though they had been hastily abandoned in the wake of the human advance. Rook and his team led the charge, advancing cautiously, but with unwavering determination. They knew that the aliens had set traps. The mountain pass was narrow and treacherous, and the enemy had booby-trapped nearly every corner. But the humans had grown accustomed to fighting in hostile territory, and their tactical ingenuity was unmatched. As they moved deeper into the pass, the first signs of resistance appeared. The alien forces had positioned snipers in the high caves above them, but the humans responded with precision. Specialist units moved into the shadows, neutralizing the snipers with silent, deadly shots. The alien forces, ever more desperate, began to mount counterattacks from behind rock formations and through hidden tunnels. But the humans were relentless. They advanced, clearing the narrow pass one checkpoint at a time, never slowing, never retreating. The resistance fighters followed closely behind, their fear of the alien invaders replaced with the fire of vengeance. Each step forward was a step toward their planet's liberation. It wasn't long before the enemy attempted to regroup in the heart of their last stronghold. They had fortified an underground base deep within the mountains, and it was there that they made their final stand. Rook knew that this would be the toughest battle yet. The alien forces had nowhere left to run, and they would fight with everything they had. "We breach the entrance, clear the rooms, and take out the leadership," Rook ordered. His voice was steady, but there was an edge to it. "This ends here." The assault on the alien stronghold was brutal. The humans, now operating with near-perfect coordination, stormed the base. Explosions rocked the underground compound as they blasted through reinforced doors, taking out alien barricades with precision. The resistance fighters worked in tandem with the human soldiers, their knowledge of the terrain proving invaluable. There was no hesitation in their movements. They knew what had to be done. Inside the base, the enemy forces fought tooth and nail to defend their position. The walls echoed with the sounds of gunfire, explosions, and alien war cries. But the humans and their allies were a force of nature. They cleared the corridors, eliminated alien stragglers, and moved deeper into the heart of the stronghold. Then, in the depths of the compound, they found the last of the alien commanders, a towering figure cloaked in cybernetic armor. He had been waiting for them, ready to make a final stand. But he underestimated the human resolve. The fight was intense. The alien commander fought with all the strength and technology at his disposal, but the humans were quicker, more cunning. They moved with a ferocity born of years of war and sacrifice. In the end, it was Sergeant Avery who landed the final blow, taking down the commander with a swift strike to the chest. The stronghold fell silent. The last of the alien leadership was gone. The planet was free. Rook stood over the wreckage of the fallen commander, looking out over the battlefield. The victory had been hard-earned, but it was complete. The invaders had been vanquished. Now, it was time to rebuild. And for the first time in years, the people of this world could breathe freely. The final echoes of the battle faded into a heavy, exhausted silence. The alien stronghold lay in ruins, a testament to the unyielding will of the humans and their newfound allies. The once feared invaders had been eradicated, their forces scattered and leaderless. The victory was not just military, it was symbolic. It was the defeat of an empire that thought itself invincible, the liberation of a planet that had been under the boot of oppression for far too long. Captain Rook stood on a shattered balcony overlooking the wreckage of the stronghold, his eyes scanning the horizon. The human forces had secured the area, But he knew this victory came at a price. The battle had been costly, lives had been lost, sacrifices made. But it had been worth it. The alien invaders were no more. The planet was free. Rook was joined by Sergeant Avery, who had been at his side throughout the entire campaign. She clapped a hand on his shoulder, a rare, genuine smile flickering on her face. "We did it, Cap. We actually did it." Rook nodded, though his face remained solemn. "It wasn't just us. Avery, the Resistance, the people who fought alongside us. This victory is theirs too. We couldn't have done it without them." Around them, the liberated planet began to stir, its people emerging from their hiding places, some still in disbelief that the nightmare was truly over. Resistance fighters, once divided by fear and desperation, now stood united with the humans, sharing in the triumph of their collective effort. The civilians who had once cowered beneath the alien oppression began to rebuild, their faces filled with hope for the first time in years. Rook turned to face the group of resistance leaders who had gathered near the ruins of the stronghold. Their faces were marked by exhaustion, but also by a sense of pride that could not be concealed. The human forces had come from across the galaxy to help, but it was the people of this planet who had fought tooth and nail for their freedom. One of the leaders, a woman named Kayla, stepped forward, her eyes brimming with gratitude. "We will never forget what you've done for us. You gave us hope when we had none. You helped us reclaim what we thought was lost forever." Rook gave her a nod, the weight of her words settling deep in his chest. "This victory belongs to all of us. You showed us what it meant to fight for something greater than ourselves." As the survivors gathered to mourn their fallen comrades and celebrate their hard-won freedom, Rook and his team began making plans for the next steps. The war had been won, but the real challenge was ahead. Rebuilding would take time. The alien presence had left scars on the land, on the people, and on the very heart of the planet. But with the humans by their side, the resistance was confident that they could rise again. The once bustling cities now stood quiet, but in the silence, there was a promise. The alien occupation had been wiped away, and the people of the planet would now forge their own future. No longer would they live in fear. No longer would they be enslaved by an alien race that thought itself superior. The human forces stayed behind to help with the recovery, offering their technology, their knowledge, and their experience to aid in the planet's reconstruction. Rook and his squad worked alongside the resistance to clear debris, rebuild infrastructure, and offer counsel. Every day was a step closer to restoring the planet to its former glory. The scars of war would remain, but so would the lessons learned and the unbreakable bonds forged in the crucible of battle. As Rook stood with his team, looking out at the horizon, he realized that the war, though over, had changed them all. They were no longer just soldiers. They were part of something larger. They had helped to reshape the future, and in doing so, had forged a legacy that would endure for generations to come. The war had been won, but it was only the beginning of a new chapter. And together, humanity and the people of this planet would write it.